Okay, everyone, this is Brian with Senior Corps in Washington, D.C., and we're going to go ahead and get started. Before we really dive in, I'd like to do a quick mic check. I know that there are some people who've joined us via the webinar component for today, and if any of you who are on the webinar can give us a little thumbs up or a smiley face or anything at all in the chat box of the webinar, it'll let us know that we're coming in loud and clear, which is very helpful before we go forward and present too much. So can those of you who are joining via Skype let us know if you can hear me? Great. I see some smiley faces coming in. Thanks, guys. That is much appreciated. We're going to do one more thing before we dive in. We have a guest speaker with us here today, and I know she's curious to see who has joined. So I'm going to ask those of you on the webinar to also just put in your name, your state, and your program, and particularly if you're an FGP, RSVP, or SCP program. And that'll let us here know who we're talking to and help us kind of tailor our talking points as we go. So if you're joining via the webinar, and you can let us know, once again, your name, your state, and your program, that would be very, very helpful. Okay, I see a lot of RSVPs coming in from Montana, Virginia, Texas, Illinois, foster grandparent program. Great, Sally, thanks to see you. Another program that has all three, FGP, SCP, and RSVP. Mostly it looks like RSVP are coming in, but certainly not entirely. Some from Pennsylvania. We've got our East Coast represented. This looks like a really great cross-section of our programs all across the country, and RSVP has come out in force. That's great to see and not entirely unexpected given our topic here today, but we're glad to see some other programs represented as well. And we do think that we'll have a little bit of something for everybody. As always, we want to cover some logistical points, some housekeeping. If you could, please press *6 on your touch-tone phone or hit the little blue microphone if you're joining over Skype, so that way you can mute your line. We do have everyone's line muted right now, so if we can't hear you, don't worry, it's supposed to be that way. Your lines are muted right now. We do hope to have the ability to have some Q&A later on, but in order to do that, we need you to mute your line as well. And you can do that by pressing *6 on a touch-tone phone or hitting the little blue microphone on your Skype button. So we're going to pause and give you a chance to do that right now. Once again, that's *6 on a touch-tone phone or the blue microphone button on Skype. Okay, this call is being recorded, and the recording will be available shortly after. Sorry, we had some unexpected feedback there. This call is being recorded, and the recording will be available after the call. In addition, the slides will be available on the Managing Senior Corps Grants page, once again under that training and technical assistance link. They're not there yet, but they will be after the call. If you're having audio problems, you can join the audio in two different ways, either by calling the line that you will see on the Managing Senior Corps Grants page or joining via Skype audio. You can join us via both of those ways. If you run into audio problems, which does happen, try using the other way to connect. Just try switching your connection. Okay. With that, we're going to go ahead and really get into the meat here today. And what we want to talk about is Senior Corps and elder justice. And in particular, we're very excited to have a special guest from one of our peer agencies at the Federal Trade Commission. I'm just going to set this up a little bit and kind of explain how we got here and why we're focusing on this in our Tuesday talks. And then I'll hand it over to our guest speaker. As you probably noticed, part of the title for this webinar is Spotlight on Elder Justice. So if you're not familiar with that term, we'd like to provide a little bit of background on our participation with other federal agencies, including the Federal Trade Commission, on elder justice issues. In 2010, President Obama signed the Elder Justice Act to provide federal resources to help understand, prevent, detect, intervene in, and even where appropriate, prosecute incidences of elder abuse, neglect, and exploitation. That same act created something called the Elder Justice Coordinating Council, which is a council of federal agencies that were identified as having programs or services that relate to elder abuse, neglect, and exploitation. It also includes the Attorney General. Many of these agencies are developing programs, information, services, and a lot more to help local organizations just like you all around the country identify and combat abuse against the elderly. I'm sure it's no surprise to all of you that this is something that CNCS feels very strongly about and that we're really honored to be a part of. Along with the Federal Trade Commission, again, our guest for today, we're one of 18 member agencies of the Council, and that's how we got here. We really want to use this as a venue to share information in this case, from another federal agency that we think would be beneficial for your programs and programming. And that's why we're so excited to introduce our guest speaker, Bridget Small, from the Federal Trade Commission. Bridget Small is in the Division of Consumer and Business Education. If you're joining via the webinar, you can read her biography on your screen right now. She's worked in fraud prevention, education, advocacy, and research for 25 years, including 18 years with AARP. So she is a true expert in this field. And we're just really excited to have her here and have this opportunity to share some ideas with all of you and hear from you too. And as we go forward today, we are going to have several different opportunities to hear from you, get some ideas from you, and start to think through how some of the tools that we're presenting here today can be used to support our volunteers and, of course, the communities that you all serve. With that, I'll hand it over to Bridget. Bridget?
Good afternoon, and thank you, Brian. Thank you, everyone out there in listening and watching land. I'm really happy to be here and happy to be able to talk about the FTC and the elder issues that I have been working on for so long, and talk about fraud prevention and talk about the Federal Trade Commission. And as a staff person at the Federal Trade Commission, one of the first things I need to say is that anything I say today is not the official view of the Federal Trade Commission. The words and the opinions that I give today are my own. You can rely on them. These are my words and expressions, but they're not official Federal Trade Commission views. So just a little bit about the Federal Trade Commission. We're a 100-year-old agency, and we work on consumer and business education. We connect through many different ways, from the consumer and business and education view, which is mine. We work through specialized websites. We have information for both businesses that we regulate and for consumers. We have information in English and Spanish, and occasionally we have information in other languages, in Korean and Chinese, in Creole. We have information that's designed for select audiences, including educators, older consumers, parents who want to keep their kids safe online, members of the military, and people with lower levels of literacy. We work with more than 17,000 community partners every year. We distribute a lot of free information and material, which we'll get to later on in this talk, so that the partners can share that in their communities. And a lot of our work is going around the country and talking at conferences and giving presentations, and when we're lucky, staying in our own hometown and giving webinars like this, presentations. We go to conferences with librarians and teachers and financial counselors. We go to corrections educator conferences. We talk with aging professionals, legal services, and all sorts of other great conferences. And as I said, our mission is to educate people and reach people, but we can't travel as much as we'd like. So we see ourselves as a wholesaler. And we do have the privilege of being able to print and generate a lot of material. And as a wholesaler, we get ideas and inspiration and feedback from the people that we talk to as we go around the country, and we turn that into material that we can create and give away, and the community partners take that back into the community and distribute it, and then tell us how it works, basically, and give us more ideas, and we keep going on with this cycle. In the most recent fiscal year, we gave away 15.3 million free publications. And I hope in the coming fiscal year, you are going to be some of the people using some of those millions and millions of publications. I want to show you one of our websites. This is called consumer.ftc.gov. This information is in the slide deck that you'll be able to see at the end.
And just so you know, if you're joining via the webinar, you see some screen or some changes on your screen right now, and it might take a minute to load, so just be patient.
I'm going to tell you about consumer.ftc.gov. This is what I call sort of the home base for consumer information. And if you can see the page, This is in English. This page is in English. And I'm going to sort of talk you and walk you around the page while Brian navigates. This is the home base for consumer information. And this shows you that we've got information on a lot of different topics. If you're looking across the top, you can see that we have information on money and credit, homes and mortgages, health and fitness, jobs and making money, privacy, identity, and online security. We also have a blog. We publish new blog posts 3 or 4 times a week, and those are about both FTC cases and about scams. There's a big yellow button there that says Scam Alerts, and I don't want Brian to click on it, but if you go there and you click on it, you'll see a page full of scam alerts that you can subscribe to, so that 2 or 3 times a week maybe you're going to get email in your inbox with the latest scam alert, which again is often information that we get from community members, like, here's the latest scam that we've heard of in this region of the country. It's the jury duty scam. It's the tech support scam. It's something that we've heard about that's new and current that we want to alert people to. All the information on this page is available in a companion site in Spanish. At the top right of this page, there's a button that says En Español, and so there's a companion site. In the center of this page, there's a section that says Take Action. So if someone needs to file a consumer complaint, or wants to register for the Do Not Call list, or wants to report identity theft, they can scroll down and you can see that there are steps that you can take immediately. If you've got one of those buttons, if you've got one of those problems, you can just hit a button, because a lot of times that's what people want to do. They want to take that action. So they can come here, click a button, and go to the information that they need for that problem. And we're going to stay on this page for a second, but I also want to point out that on the right there's a section that says Just for You. We've organized some material that you can look at later into chunks of information. So there's information for older adults, for consumer advocates, for military families. So this is a lot of the work that we do, is try to make information accessible and easily accessible, anticipating what people's different needs are, and organize it that way. And all the links that I'm mentioning and the things I'm saying are included in the information you'll get in the slide deck at the end. Can we go back to the pass it on?
We can. You'll see some changes on your screen again, and it'll take just a minute if you're joining our webinar.
So one of the things that we have done in the last 3 or 4 years in trying to reach audiences and understand better the needs of certain audiences is understand what's going on with older adults and how we can do a better job of tailoring information for their needs. And several years ago, through our work with law enforcement and legal services providers and community groups, we realized that not only are there special scams or certain scams that particularly target older adults, the material we had wasn't really working. The print material, the online material, the style of the material we had wasn't always the best for older adults. And the content was okay, but it was kind of heavy duty. Overwhelming, wasn't quite right, basically. So we got to work, and we talked to older adults, and we talked to the people who work with them, and for all I know, we may have talked to some of you. We talked to activities directors. We probably talked to RSVPs. We talked to people in congregate meal sites. We talked to legal services providers. We talked to people who we work with about the scams, and we showed them sample materials, and we asked for feedback and said, help us design material and information that's the right kind of information that talks about the scams in the right ways. And these conversations helped us set a direction and a tone for the campaign, and we created new material, and we surveyed people about it, and they reviewed our sample material, and we used their suggestions to finalize campaigns. And we can talk about some of the scams that we ended up talking about, but this is a good point too, to just ask about some scams that you've encountered, some common scams, some things that you all have encountered, or the people that you work with are encountering now.
Yeah, I'm curious. Let's just use the webinar function. We will open the lines shortly, I think, for some Q&A. But just on the webinar, I'm curious if anyone on the line has experienced either themselves or a family member or their beneficiaries a financial scam. Is that something that some of the people who have joined today have been exposed to out there in the community? You can just drop it in the chat box if that's something that you have been exposed to, and we can read it out here. Okay, here we go. Dorothy has heard of trying to get Medicare numbers and info. Wow. Marcia says that a good friend lost $500,000 to an IRS scammer. Another, Melody, says that she's run into an IRS scam as well. It looks like that might be a thread. Anyone else want to share an example of something they've heard or been exposed to? And again, it doesn't have to be the program. Okay, a grandparents scam. That's interesting because that's not actually something I'm familiar with, but I think Bridget's going to talk about a little bit. Jan says calls claiming we owe them money when we don't. Yeah, okay. So it looks like this is something that some of us have seen before and have been exposed to before.
Yeah, I'm sitting here nodding my head.
Unfortunately, I'm laughing because this ties to what we were talking about so much. But obviously,
clearly, you all are hearing the common things. Yeah, medical bills. You've paid. Fake debt collectors, IRS scam, the grandparent scam. Right. Things that are coming on the phone, sometimes things that are coming online. I may ask you that question too later on, but here's a list of scams. There are 6 things, and the 6 scams that we started with when we started Pass It On, when we created the first set of materials, were identity theft, healthcare scam, which actually is what somebody just mentioned online. It's the Medicare thing. The calls that said, hello, it's open season, time to re-enroll, tell me your Medicare number, which it wasn't. The charity fraud. Paying too much, which were really, when we broke it down, were those sort of free trial offer things where you sign up for something and you think you're paying $3.95 for shipping, and next month you get the $89.95 charge on your credit card. You have won scams. Prizes, lotteries, and sweepstakes, and then imposter scams. And I'll say a little bit more about imposters. Is when we first started talking to people about imposter scams, we thought, well, we'll just talk about imposter scams because there are so many different kinds of imposters. There are the fake grandparents, there are the fake debt collectors, there are the fake Medicare people. We can talk about imposter scams, and people came back to us and said that we kind of blown it because you couldn't generalize about imposter scams, that they really wanted help coping with the different kinds of imposter scams. So we said, okay, tell us about what's bothering you the most. And something that came up were those tech support scams, where you get the pop-up online, when you're online and you get the pop-up that says, oh no, your computer is infected, you must call us immediately. Or, there's all kinds of stories that come with that. Your computer's infected, or your computer's being misused, or all sorts of crazy stories. The grandparent scam, where someone calls you and pretends to be your grandchild or says your grandchild is in danger. Online dating scams. And then the IRS scam, which was going crazy for a while, where people were getting calls, people were pretending to be the IRS and saying that you owed vast amounts of money. And in September, the Department of Justice, the Internal Revenue Service, around the end of September, did a big, or towards the end of October, the IRS and Department of Justice did a big takedown of some of the IRS scammers who are operating outside the country. And that seems to have tapered off for the time being. But what I wanted to say was, fine.
Hey guys, I saw that we may have lost audio for a minute, but I think we're back. We are just in the process of going to a website where Bridget is going to show us the tools that Pass It On has to prevent these scams, to actually address some of the things that you guys just pointed out.
Can you pass it on? Okay. I hope that now on your screen you can see the website for Pass It On. You'll get the URL for this in the slide deck, but it's ftc.gov/pass it on. Pay no attention to what you see in the screen up there. I've just told you the shortcut. This is the place where you can see the Pass It On information and where you can go to read it and if you want to order it. And if we can just scroll down a little bit, you can see at the top there are the first 6 scams that we talked about listed with an arrow. If you, for example, click identity theft, you're going to jump right to all the information for identity theft. And I want to talk for a minute about different ways you can use this. And I know Brian's going to talk about different ways you use things in your programs. For example, if you had someone who came in who wanted to sit at the computer and read some information for a moment, if you clicked that Read More button, you could sit at the computer and you could just read the article. That right there is the entire article. Part of what we learned is that we were really overdoing it with the information that we gave people. That when we created an article, it was better to say, here's what the problem is, here's what you can do, and here's where you can report. So if you've got somebody with a computer, they can read more, and then you can close that button. And that's all you need to do. And if you as a program person want to order print materials, you see there the print materials that are available. There are print articles or print bookmarks or print activities. And if you do want to order them, we're going to show you in a minute where you can go to order these things. And all that suite of materials, an article, a bookmark, an activity, or a PowerPoint if you even wanted to do it, are all available from our free, and I said I would say this several times, free, in bulk, delivered right to your door for free, materials site. We're going to go to that in a second. So that's one of the things I wanted to show you is that there's this range of material available. You can choose to do it with a single topic, or you can order a suite of information through a free folder, which is an introductory folder that lets you sample information. If you want to learn a little bit about several topics, you could order that free folder, and it would be an intro to multiple topics. But if you're just interested, say, in this week we want to talk about identity theft, you could focus on identity theft materials. So your choices, again, when you're on this site, you can read directly from the site using the Read More button. If you want to print one article, you can print an article from this site, or you can go to the bulk order site, which we'll get to, and order lots and lots of articles. Okay, so just to go on to the next slide, and then we want to
You should be seeing some changes as we go back to the PowerPoint.
So this is where we ended up with a Pass It On campaign. We wanted to encourage people to start a conversation. It was really important that when we were encouraging people to talk with each other, to share information, to pass it on, that we encourage community building, and that when older people and their friends were talking, that they were sharing information, that we didn't come across as another government agency who said, here's what we know that you need to know, and have a fact sheet. That we were respectful in our tone and didn't overwhelm people, and delivered the information that people really wanted. And I'm glad to see from the comments, at least, that we were sharing some of the information that that has been occurring, in your lives. One of the things that we said we would ask at this point was, does this information present ideas to you? Mm-hmm. Does it look like it would have application for the things that you have been seeing.
Yeah, and so we're going to try to do this a couple of ways. If you want and you're joined via the webinar, we'd love to just hear what you think so far, and if this is something that you think you might be able to use, and if so, how. And you can drop that into the webinar using the chat function. And we're also going to try to open the lines. To open the lines, as I already said, what we really need everyone to do is to mute their own lines, and you can do that by pressing *6 on your touch-tone phone. Once again, that's *6 on your touch-tone phone, or pressing the little blue microphone button if you're joining via Skype. And if you're using both ways to connect, please do both of those. Once again, that's *6 or the little blue microphone button. I'm going to pause for just a second and give everyone a chance to do that. Okay, and we're going to go ahead and open up the lines first, and then we'll go to Skype, because I see some comments are coming in over Skype. Let's open the lines first and see if anyone wants to share anything.
Presentation mode is now disabled.
Okay, your lines are open. Is there anyone who wants to share a reaction or a thought about how they might use this? Your lines are all open.
Hello?
Yes, hello.
Hello?
Yes, we can hear you.
My name is... Hello, yes. I'm calling from the Clinton Essex RSVP program in northern New York.
Great, thanks for joining.
Hi, and we have our RSVP volunteers do a daily money management assistance service. They help people with precarious finances and a bill payer management service. And I would use these materials to help educate the consumers that the RSVP volunteers work with on a weekly and a monthly basis.
Fantastic. That's great. Thank you very much for sharing. Anyone else on the line want to share anything before we read some of the answers that we're getting in here over Skype? Or reactions. It doesn't have to be how you'll use this. It could just be a general reaction, a thought, a comment, a question.
Yeah, or a question about more information you would like to have.
Mm-hmm. Okay, if there are no other questions on the line, we do have some things that we can use on Skype. But I just want to give us one last chance for those who are calling in. If you want to share a thought, a reaction, or a question. Okay, we're going to put the lines back on mute while we work a little bit with some of the suggestions that were dropped into our webinar. You'll hear a quick announcement.
Presentation mode is now enabled.
And thanks very much for the one example that we did get. You know, I see some really interesting ideas here. A seminar workshop for seniors. Bridget, I did see that there was a PowerPoint available. Seems like that would be a great tool. I see people using some things in their newsletter. That's really interesting. Bridget, I have a question. I think when we talked about this earlier, you mentioned something about the ability to kind of copy and paste text. Am I remembering that right?
Yes. The information on the FTC site, the information in Pass It On, is all free. It's publicly available. It is not copyrighted. It's free to copy, cut, paste, use any way that's appropriate for you. So please go right ahead and do that and enjoy.
Great. That's really fantastic to know, because I think a couple of people thinking about their newsletters. Patty is thinking about her foster grandparent in-service. That's a great way to get this information out using the free copies.
And the triad, too. Go triad, person. That's exactly right.
Okay. Dorothy has a question about performance measures. She would like to see H1 or H2 expanded to include other things besides just healthcare services. And that's a really interesting point. We don't always have as much freedom as we would like to tweak those things, but I do want to point out that financial literacy does crop up in a number of different performance measures. It's a service activity that you'll see there in your respective Appendix Bs. But Dorothy, thanks very much for that comment. We'll take that back and see what we can do on the future for that. Obviously, we're not being shy at all about how much we support elder justice activities, so we'll look long and hard at anything we can do to make it easier for our programs to do that. And I even see Marcia commenting about how this could work with a VISTA program. If you're not familiar with it, those of you on the line, VISTA is another program of the Corporation for National Community Service that focuses specifically on poverty prevention. And this is a wonderful thing that you can do if you have other programs, even that aren't quote-unquote Senior Corps. These are tools that, Bridget, if I'm understanding you right, are available to the public to use.
Oh, absolutely.
In any number of ways.
And I saw at one point watching the conversation go by, someone had a question about fake checks, and I lost the question here in the feed, but please go back to consumer.ftc.gov and use the search box in the upper right-hand corner, because there's a lot of other information there, either a blog post or an article that will help you deal with some of those questions. Fake checks are a big problem and something that we do have information on.
Okay. Well, thanks very much for those suggestions and those ideas and those questions. We're going to go look at another website now, the bulk order website.
So this is, how do I get that free bulk delivered to my doorstep?
Free bulk.
Yeah.
We made a point before we got here today. We said
I get an M&M every time I say free.
we agree that could not be said enough times. Okay.
Okay, this is a shopping site. It will be familiar to all of you who have shopped online, and this is our bulk order site. If you look on the left, you'll see the word campaigns. Pass It On is considered a campaign. So if you click on the Pass It On campaign, if that's what you want to order in this case, you'll go to a page that shows you all the things that you can order. So the first thing that you see at the top of the page is, for example, an article about online dating scams. So I want to walk you through a transaction because there are a few pointers at the end I want to make sure that you notice. So if you would just click, select a quantity, add it to your cart, please. And then we'll just add it to your cart. Oh, we'll update. Okay, let's go to your cart. And then just check out. And this asks for basic shipping and delivery information. And the information I wanted to show you is really at the bottom of the screen. There are a couple things that we ask you that I hope and encourage you to do. One is, if you're interested, there's a place that says stay in touch. And if you want to get information and updates when new publications come out, you can check a box. You're not required to. It's something you can do. There's also an option to let us know what kind of organization you are. There's a drop-down box. And if you choose to let us know, I guess you'd be other government agency.
We are a government agency.
You are a nonprofit organization. You are an other government agency.
Our attendees are mostly nonprofit organizations. Okay. Mostly. There's certainly plenty of local government and other types of organizations there as well.
If you're a nonprofit organization, if you wish to, please check that. It really helps us to know who's receiving and using our information. And then scroll down one more time to see that the bulk order site is free, but the shipping is slow. It will take 3 to 4 weeks, so please plan ahead when you do order these materials.
That's great. We want everybody to use this stuff right away, but you may need to wait for an in-service or two to go by if that's where you're thinking about using it.
Please plan ahead. Those are the things I wanted to do. And the next slide I had was information and websites, and that will come to you if you get a copy of this slide deck.
That's correct.
And then you had some information and some ideas about using this information.
Yeah, I really appreciate all of the great examples that we've already gotten. And when we were thinking about how this could be relevant to our grantees, we came up with a few ideas too. And what we really want to sort of explore is just the range of ways this great information can be used, and that you could kind of go small, medium, or large in your approach. We're pulling the PowerPoint back up, but in our brainstorming, we thought of 3 broad categories of how programs could use this: for volunteers, and then at the client or beneficiary level, and then even sharing with others in the community. And these are just all on the table really for your programs to use as much or as little as you want. So if we're looking at the context of maybe a foster grandparent program that's primarily focused on education, you could still just share this information with your volunteers, and that would probably make a pretty big impact there. But then as we start to look at our senior companion and RSVP programs, there are other ways that you can engage. And it was really interesting to see a lot of you were ahead of us, as usual, in thinking about how you could do this by distributing materials, by incorporating them into things that you already do, like a daily money management class. I love that suggestion. And even sharing with community partners. When we thought about how this could be used, we thought about, again, a spectrum. But what we want to stress is that if you just use this for your volunteers, that's great. But if you do want to really incorporate it into what you do, so much the better. So we thought of a theoretical senior companion program that starts off by using one of these PowerPoints at their in-service training. Maybe they get bookmarks. I don't know that we really spotlighted them, but there are actually bookmarks available on that site that Bridget showed us. And then after that, they have a discussion, right? So you hand this stuff out, but I know that you guys are often looking for different types of things to do to freshen up your training activity. So after you hand this out, have a discussion about it. See what people learn. See what resonates with people. And that might give you some insight even into your own community and what's of a particular need there. And then as a program director, that could give you an idea about what else to get for the future. And then finally, just think long term, and you can have a store of these available and refresh it as necessary. So that's one example, but obviously a program could just stop at the in-service part, and that's okay. But we just wanted to get creative in thinking through how this could be kind of framed into a broader program. We went ahead and just thought of another, again, theoretical example, but as it turns out, our theoretical example is really already being done out there in the field, and that's not really all that surprising. We started to think about an RSVP program, and we thought of one that maybe, like our example that we heard from Northern New York, already has something related to this. So maybe they use Pass It On materials to develop a Train the Trainer presentation and train their volunteers in it. Order a folder for each volunteer, and then the volunteers use that website. We wanted to kind of demonstrate the breadth of ways that you could use this material. Maybe they use that website when they sit down with clients and just go over the information there on the website. And they don't order a whole lot of material. They just use what's already available online. But then the sponsor can periodically get material for events and hand it on when they're doing recruitment fairs because, hey, you know what? That's going to be a population of older Americans too. And why not distribute that information in that way? When I think about these materials, and one of the reasons why we brought Bridget and FTC here is just the flexibility is really impressive. And we know that you all are very, very creative in how you use tools like these. And we can't wait to see what kinds of things you do. And of course, to continue supporting you in this. We do have plenty of time left, so I think now's a good time to take questions or other comments too. And once again, if you're joining via the webinar, feel free to drop something into the chat box and we can answer any questions that way. And we're going to go ahead and open the lines again. Before we open the lines, please do press *6 on your touch-tone phone if you're not planning to ask a question. And if you're joining via Skype, hit that little blue microphone button. Once again, that's *6. Or the little blue microphone button. We're going to unmute the lines and you'll hear a brief announcement. And also, please do remember that you can ask a question via the chat box at any time.
Presentation mode is now disabled.
For like scams or...
Hi, once again, if you could mute your phone.
But you gotta allow 3 or 4 weeks. Yeah.
We're hearing some background noise. Are there any questions or comments? This is another great time to share ideas. You can also drop any questions you may have into the chat box. Okay. Well, I see Louis saying that it's great information. I'm glad to hear that. we're going to go ahead and take the lines off mute, although we are enjoying the mellow music number. Elizabeth, you say all you hear is music. That is all that is on the line right now. We're going to turn the lines back on mute just before we wrap up because we do want to make sure we spotlight some other
Presentation mode is now enabled.
Okay. Lines are back on mute. Luis asks, what is the topic for January? Great question, Luis. We're not totally set there, but we're actually looking at absenteeism in ways that volunteers can help support efforts to combat chronic absenteeism. So if you are a program, an RSVP program that works in the education space, that might be relevant to you. And of course, if you're a foster grandparent program, that could be relevant to you as well. Please do feel free to drop some questions into the Skype chat window as we go ahead, but we do want to make sure that we spotlight some of these websites. Bridget, is there anything you'd like to add about these websites?
No, I think I would encourage you to take a look at the Pass It On information and take a look at the other consumer information that's there. I'm sure you're encountering lots of different kinds of, you and the people you work with are encountering lots of different kinds of consumer problems, and there actually is a lot of information you can use. And please take another look at signing up for the scam alerts. It's a great way to stay on top of what's happening, and those are easy things for you to print out and pass around in any kind of a small group meeting, and just an easy way to let people know what's new and different out in the world.
Great, fantastic. Yeah, Dorothy just dropped a comment into the webinar box. She says it's wonderful information that we can use across our service. They're an area agency on aging, and they can use it with volunteers, clients, the aging community at large, recruiting events, or for presentations. Not to mention they'll be easy to reproduce in newsletters. It's getting more and more difficult to obtain free items to distribute. And then she thanks you. And before we sign off here, I just want to echo Dorothy's thanks to Bridget. This is a fantastic resource, and I'm so glad that we're able to offer it to our programs. And it seems like there are a lot of people who are really getting ready to use it right now.
I know I heard somebody say it's kind of a hassle to have to wait for it, but once you get it, you will enjoy it. If you order a brick of bookmarks and just set them out, and people will take them and they will use them, and they'll have something on hand easy to help them remember, and especially they'll know where to report a complaint, because it's the complaints that people make that let us know what the problems are, and that's where, when the problems are reported, that's where the money goes to fight the scams. So please use the information.
Okay. Bridget's contact information is up there on the screen. As we said, a recording will be available shortly along with slides. On behalf of all of Senior Corps and the whole Senior Corps community, I want to thank Bridget for joining us here today and just doing a fantastic job with these great resources.
Thank you so much.
And she's not here with us, but I also need to thank Jan Newsom. Many of you may know Jan Newsom from Senior Corps. She was instrumental in this connection and in bringing us all together here. So I do need to thank her as well. With that, we're going to let everyone go 15 minutes early. Fantastic. So we got a free 15 minutes here today, too.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Have a great afternoon.